never imagined sitting alone by my daughter's hospital bed while my husband lounged on a Balinese beach with another woman. No mother does. Yet there I was, clutching Sophia's small, cold hand as machines beeped around us, monitoring the fragile heartbeat that doctors weren't sure would last through the night. Her favorite purple unicorn tucked beside her pale face, the stuffed animal Charles had promised to repair but never did, its missing eye and torn ear a testament to promises he hadn't kept. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Promises of safety, of family, of in sickness and in health. Words that felt hollow now as I stared at the phone in my trembling hand. The hospital room was too bright, too sterile. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across Sophia's face, making her look even more fragile than she already was. 6 years old and fighting for her life. Congenital heart disease doesn't care about fairy tales or happy endings. The walls were decorated with cheerful cartoon characters that seemed to mock our situation with their perpetual smiles. Outside this room, life continued. Nurses changed shifts. Other parents comforted their children. The world spun on its axis, indifferent to our pain. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Claudette, my sister-in-law. She'd always been closer to me than to her own brother. Have you seen this? The image loaded slowly, pixel by pixel, as if giving me one last chance to look away, to preserve whatever shred of dignity I had left. But I couldn't. My eyes remained fixed on the screen as the picture appeared in cruel clarity. Charles, my husband of 8 years, lounging on white sand beneath a palm tree. His arm wrapped around a woman I recognized immediately, Paula, his administrative assistant. Her head rested on his bare chest, both of them laughing at some private joke, cocktails in hand. The Balinese resort's logo visible on the beach towel. Beneath them, the timestamp. Today, 4:18 p.m. local time. The exact moment I was being told by doctors that Sophia needed another emergency surgery. Beneath the photo, Claudette had written, "I'm so sorry, Elizabeth. Curtis just sent me this from his business trip. He saw them together at the Amala Resort. I couldn't keep this from you." The room seemed to spin. My lungs forgot how to draw breath. The steady beep of Sophia's heart monitor became distant, as if I were underwater. This wasn't just a business trip that Charles couldn't cut short. This wasn't the critical investor meeting he'd claimed made it impossible to return, even after I'd called him sobbing when Sophia collapsed at school 3 days ago. This was betrayal in its purest form, calculated, deliberate, cruel. I set my phone down carefully, as if it might explode if handled too roughly. My fingers found their way back to Sophia's hand, so small within my own. Her tiny fingernails were tinged slightly blue, a sign her oxygen levels weren't where they should be. The pink polish we'd applied together last weekend was already chipping. Mommy-daughter manicures, we called them, a ritual Charles had always been too busy to witness. "Ms. Morgan?" I looked up to find Dr. Carla Reynolds in the doorway, clipboard in hand. Her eyes held that careful mix of compassion and clinical detachment that skilled pediatric cardiologists master. I'd grown to both dread and appreciate her directness over the past 3 years of Sophia's treatment. "The surgical team is ready to discuss the procedure," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "We need to make some decisions quickly." "My husband," I began, then stopped. What could I say? That he was sipping cocktails in Bali while our daughter's life hung in the balance? That he'd chosen another woman over his own child? The words died in my throat, replaced by a hard knot of something I couldn't yet name. Not just grief, not just anger, something colder, more resolute. "I understand he's unavailable," Dr. Reynolds said carefully, her eyes flickering to my phone on the bedside table. Had she seen the photo? Or was my face simply that transparent? "But we can't wait any longer for his input." Sophia's mitral valve is deteriorating faster than we anticipated. The regurgitation is getting worse. I straightened my spine, pushing back the tears that threatened to spill. Sophia needed me present, focused. Charles had made his choice, and now I would make mine. "Tell me what we need to do," I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. As Dr. Reynolds explained the risks of the procedure, words like cardiopulmonary bypass, sternotomy, and valve replacement washing over me, my mind split in two. One part absorbed every medical detail, asking clarifying questions, weighing options with the fierce attention of a mother fighting for her child. The other part replayed that image of Charles and Paula, cataloging every detail of their betrayal. The way his fingers splayed possessively across her bare shoulder. The carefree tilt of his head, thrown back in laughter. The matching gold bracelets they wore. Was that new? A symbol of something? The fact that he was clearly using our family emergency fund for this getaway. The special account we'd established specifically for Sophia's medical needs. My free hand instinctively moved to the hospital bill that had arrived this morning. Insurance would cover most of it, but not all. Never all. I'd been trying to reach Charles all day to discuss how we'd manage the remainder. Now I understood why he hadn't answered. "Elizabeth?" Dr. Reynolds' voice pulled me back to the present. "Are you with me? I know this is overwhelming." "I'm here," I said, squeezing Sophia's hand gently. "And I'm the only parent Sophia needs right now. Schedule the surgery." As Dr. Reynolds nodded and left to make the arrangements, I felt something shift inside me. The woman who had called Charles 17 times in the past 3 days, begging him to come home, no longer existed. In her place stood someone harder, someone who understood that the man in that photo wasn't coming to our rescue. He wasn't stuck in meetings or dealing with travel complications. He had simply chosen himself, his desires, his comfort, his new life, over the daughter who still asked for him every time she woke up. Sophia stirred slightly, her eyelids fluttering but not opening. Her lips moved in the ghost of a word that might have been "Daddy." I leaned closer, brushing a strand of dark hair from her forehead. "It's okay, sweetheart," I whispered. "Mommy's here. Mommy's not going anywhere." And in that moment, as the evening sun cast long shadows through the hospital window, I made 2 promises to myself. First, that Sophia would survive this. I would move heaven and earth to make it so. And second, that Charles would regret the day he decided a Balinese beach was more important than his daughter's bedside. What I didn't realize then was just how deep his betrayal went, or how far I would go to protect what remained of our family. The photo was just the beginning. The first domino in a chain of revelations that would uncover a deception more calculated than I could have imagined. But as I sat there, holding my daughter's hand while machines breathed for her, one thing became crystal clear. Charles thought he had all the power. He was about to learn how wrong he was. Sleep had eluded me for most of the night. I'd spent hours watching Sophia's chest rise and fall, cataloging each labored breath as if my vigilance alone could keep her heart beating. The nurses had urged me to rest on the narrow cot they'd set up, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw that image of Charles and Paula on the beach. By morning, the photo had burned itself into my consciousness, a snapshot of betrayal so complete it left physical pain in its wake. Dawn brought a flurry of pre-surgical activity. Nurses checked Sophia's vitals while explaining the upcoming procedure in child-friendly terms. They brought her a special stuffed bear with a zipper down its chest, showing how the doctors would help her heart. Sophia, still groggy from medication, nodded with a trust that broke my heart. She'd been through so much in her short life, enduring pain no child should know, yet somehow maintained a resilience I couldn't fathom. "Mommy, is Daddy coming today?" she asked, her voice thin and raspy from the breathing tube they'd removed yesterday. "He's trying, sweetheart," I lied, hating myself for it. But he's very far away. He loves you very much. The preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Words tasted like ash in my mouth. How many more excuses would I make for him? How many more times would I shield her from the truth? That her father had chosen a tropical getaway with his mistress over her hospital bed? As they prepared to take Sophia to surgery, my phone buzzed with a text. I expected another message from Claudette, perhaps an update on whether Curtis had seen Charles again. Instead, it was from a number I didn't recognize. You don't know me, but I work at a Mala resort. Your husband checked in with a woman 3 days ago. They're not hiding their relationship. There's more you should know. Financial matters. Call this number if you want details. Ebony. My hands trembled so violently I nearly dropped the phone. Financial matters? What did that mean? Charles and I maintained separate accounts for our personal spending, but shared joint accounts for household expenses, and most importantly, Sophia's medical fund. That account had nearly $180,000, money we'd saved, fundraised, and received from family specifically for Sophia's ongoing treatment and any emergencies. Before I could process this new message, the surgical team arrived to take Sophia. Surgery will take approximately 4 hours, Dr. Reynolds explained. The waiting area is on the 3rd floor. We'll send updates throughout the procedure. I kissed Sophia's forehead, whispering promises of ice cream and movie marathons once she was better. As they wheeled her away, she clutched her purple unicorn with one hand and gave me a small, brave wave with the other. The sight nearly shattered me. Once alone in the empty room, I stared at the mysterious text. My thumb hovered over the call button as questions raced through my mind. Who was Ebony? Could I trust her? What if this was some kind of scam targeting vulnerable people? But another, darker thought pushed through. What if Charles had done something to our finances? What if Sophia's medical fund was in jeopardy? I made the call. Elizabeth? A woman's voice answered immediately. I've been waiting for your call. I'm sorry to contact you this way. Who are you? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. How? Do you know about my husband? I'm the financial controller at Amala Resort, Ebony explained. Your husband and his companion have been staying in our premium ocean villa, $200 per night. They've charged everything to their room. Private dining, spa treatments, diving excursions. The bill is over $12,000 already. My stomach lurched. And you're telling me this why? Because he's using a card linked to an account named Sophia's Heart Fund. Our system flags unusual spending patterns, and this triggered an alert. It's not my place to interfere in personal matters, but when I saw the account name and then overheard him mention his daughter's illness to another guest, it didn't sit right. The room seemed to tilt beneath me. I grabbed the edge of the hospital bed to steady myself. Are you certain? I managed. I'm looking at the transaction records right now, Ebony confirmed. There's more. He's booked their stay for another 2 weeks, and yesterday he made a down payment on a beach property, $50,000. Same account, $50,000, from Sophia's medical fund. While she lay in a hospital bed fighting for her life, while I worried about covering the portion of her surgery insurance wouldn't pay for. I need to see these records, I said, my voice no longer shaking but hard as steel. I've already compiled them. It's not exactly protocol, but... Ebony paused. I have a daughter too. I can email everything to you. As I gave her my email address, a notification from my banking app appeared on my screen. With growing dread, I opened it while still on the call. Elizabeth, are you still there? Ebony asked. He's transferring more money right now, I whispered, watching in real time as Charles moved another $75,000 from Sophia's medical fund to a different account I didn't recognize. I can see it happening. You need to freeze that account immediately, Ebony advised. Call your bank right now. I ended the call and immediately dialed my bank, fingers trembling as I navigated the automated system. By the time I reached a representative and explained the situation, Charles had already completed the transfer. The medical fund now contained just under $30,000, barely enough to cover Sophia's current hospital stay and post-surgical care, let alone any future treatments. We can attempt to reverse the most recent transfer, the banking representative explained, but I have to inform you that since Mr. Morgan is a joint account holder, he has legal access to these funds. For future protection, we can remove his access, but we'll need documentation. Documentation. Legal protection. These words swirled in my mind as I ended the call and sank into the chair beside Sophia's empty bed. The magnitude of Charles's betrayal was still unfolding, revealing depths of selfishness I couldn't comprehend. This wasn't just an affair. This wasn't just abandonment during a family crisis. This was calculated theft from our critically ill daughter. My phone buzzed again. Ebony's promised email had arrived, containing PDFs of resort charges, payment receipts, and a note. There's a photo attached of the property they viewed yesterday. Realtor said they're planning to close the deal before returning to the States. I opened the image with shaking hands. There stood Charles and Paula, arms around each other, standing in front of a stunning beachfront villa. A sold sign had been digitally added to the photo by the realtor. The caption read, "Congratulations on your new Bali home, Mr. and Mrs. Morgan." Mrs. Morgan. The room spun around me. Paula was using my name. They were buying property together, with Sophia's money. They were planning a life together while my daughter fought for hers. In that moment, something inside me fundamentally changed. The hurt, the betrayal, the disbelief, all of it crystallized into something harder, colder, more focused. This wasn't just about a cheating husband anymore. This was about my daughter's future, her care, her very survival. With newfound clarity, I composed a text to Claudette. "I need to speak with your father immediately. It's about Charles, Sophia's medical fund, and his new life in Bali." Claudette's father, Michael, had spent 30 years in law enforcement before retiring. More importantly, he had maintained connections with international police forces, including contacts in Indonesia from his time working with Interpol. If anyone could help me navigate the legal implications of what Charles had done, both the financial fraud and his abandonment of Sophia, it was Michael. As I sent the message, my phone lit up with an update from the surgical team. "Sophia stable. Procedure progressing as expected." I clutched the phone to my chest, tears finally breaking free. My daughter was fighting, and so would I. Charles thought he had escaped to paradise with his mistress and our daughter's money. He was about to learn that paradise had its own version of hell. The surgical waiting room existed in a strange liminal space. Time moved differently here. Minutes stretched into hours as I sat rigidly in an uncomfortable chair, surrounded by other parents whose faces reflected my own fear and exhaustion. A muted TV played in the corner. Coffee grew cold in styrofoam cups. Magazines from months. Ago lay untouched on side tables. I couldn't focus on any of it. My mind oscillated between two terrors: Sophia's heart surgery and Charles's devastating betrayal. Every time my phone buzzed with a surgical update, my heart would seize with fear. Every time I glanced at the banking app to confirm what I already knew, that Charles had indeed stolen from our daughter, white-hot rage surged through me. "Elizabeth?" I looked up to see Claudette hurrying toward me, her usually impeccable appearance slightly disheveled, as if she'd left in a rush. She wrapped her arms around me, and for a moment, I allowed myself to lean into her embrace. "I came as soon as I got your message," she said, pulling back to study my face. "Dad's already making calls to his contact in Denpasar. How's Sophia?" "Still. In surgery. It's been 2 hours." My voice sounded hollow, even to my own ears. "They say she's stable." Claudette sat beside me, taking my hand in hers. "And you?" How are you holding up? How was I holding up? The question seemed absurd. My daughter was fighting for her life while my husband drained her medical fund to build a new life with his mistress. I was surviving on hospital coffee and adrenaline, had slept perhaps 3 hours in the last 2 days, and had just discovered that the man I'd built a life with was capable of cruelty I couldn't have imagined. I'm functioning, I finally answered. Claudette nodded, understanding what I couldn't articulate. She'd always been perceptive that way, so unlike her brother, who excelled at presenting the charming facade people wanted to see while hiding. His true nature. Dad wants to know if you've spoken to Charles directly since discovering everything, she said carefully. I shook my head. I've thought about calling him, about screaming at him, about begging him to return the money. But what would that accomplish? He'd just have advance warning to hide the rest of it. That's exactly what Dad said. He thinks we need to gather evidence before confronting Charles. She hesitated. Have you checked your other accounts? Your joint savings? The thought hadn't even occurred to me. I'd been so focused on Sophia's medical fund that I hadn't considered. Charles might have accessed our other accounts. With shaking hands, I opened the banking app again and navigated to our joint savings account. Empty. All $43,000 we'd saved for emergencies, gone. Transferred out yesterday to the same unknown account as the medical fund money. He took everything, I whispered, the phone nearly slipping from my numb fingers. Every penny we saved together. Claudette took the phone gently from my hand, examining the transaction history herself. Her expression hardened. Elizabeth, when did Charles leave for this business trip? 6 days ago. He was supposed to be in Singapore for meetings. Look at this, she said, pointing to a transaction from 7 days ago. A wire transfer to a Mala resort in Bali. He'd planned this before he even left. The realization crashed over me. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. This wasn't Charles stranded overseas when Sophia's condition worsened, unable to return because of commitments. He had never intended to be there for her. For us. This trip, this affair, this theft, all of it had been meticulously planned when Sophia collapsed at school, I said slowly, piecing it together. When I called him panicking as the ambulance took her away, he already knew he wasn't coming back. Elizabeth, Claudette began, but was interrupted by my phone ringing. It was Michael, her father. I'm putting you on speaker, I told him, hands still trembling. Claudette's here with me. Elizabeth, Michael's authoritative voice filled the small corner of the waiting room where we sat. I've spoken with my contact in the Bali Police Department. First, I need to ask, are you certain about what Charles has done? Yes. I have documentation of the transfers from Sophia's medical fund and our savings, nearly $250,000 in total. I also have confirmation from the financial controller at Amala Resort that he's used at least $62,000 for their stay and a down payment on property. Good. That gives us something concrete. Michael's tone was measured, calculated, the voice of someone who had handled crises for decades. My contact says they can investigate based on the financial fraud angle. Wire fraud. Across international boundaries is a serious offense. What does that mean for Sophia's money? I asked. Can we get it back? Possibly. They can freeze assets connected to the fraud while investigating. But Elizabeth, you need to understand, this will be public. Charles will face potential criminal charges. The weight of that statement hung in the air. Criminal charges. My husband, Sophia's father, potentially arrested in Bali. Under any other circumstances, I might have hesitated, might have considered the implications for our family, for Sophia. But as I sat in that hospital waiting room, my daughter's life, hanging in the balance while Charles lounged in paradise with money meant for her care, I felt no conflict whatsoever. Do it, I said firmly. Whatever it takes to secure that money for Sophia's future care. There's something else, Michael continued. My contact mentioned that foreigners purchasing property in Bali often use questionable methods to circumvent Indonesian law restricting foreign ownership. If Charles is trying to buy property there, he may be committing additional fraud. He is, I confirmed, thinking of the sold sign in the realtor's photo. They're in the process of purchasing a beach villa. That gives us additional leverage. I'll have my contact start the process immediately. In the meantime, document everything. Every transfer, every communication. As the call ended, a nurse appeared in the doorway. "Mrs. Morgan? Dr. Reynolds would like to speak with you about Sophia." My heart lurched. The surgery should have had at least another hour to go. Had something gone wrong? I rose on unsteady legs, Claudette's supportive hand at my elbow. "I'll be right here," she promised. The walk to the consultation room was a blur. Dr. Reynolds was waiting, her surgical mask hanging around her neck, her expression carefully neutral. "We've completed the valve replacement," she said as I sank into the chair across from her. "Sophia is being moved to recovery now." Did everything go well?" My voice caught. "There were complications," Dr. Reynolds began, and my world narrowed to a pinpoint. The damage to her valve was more extensive than the imaging showed. We had to take additional measures. What does that mean? The words felt scraped from my throat. It means her recovery will be more challenging. It means she'll need specialized follow-up care, likely for years. But she'll recover? I pressed, needing absolute clarity. Dr. Reynolds's professional demeanor softened slightly. "She's stable now. The next 24 hours are critical, but yes, I believe she'll recover. With proper care and support, she should lead a relatively normal life. Proper care and support. Care that would require the very money Charles had stolen. Support that he had abandoned the moment it became inconvenient." "Can I see her?" I asked. "She's being settled in the PICU. A nurse will come get you in about 20 minutes. I nodded, unable to form words through the storm of emotions. Relief that Sophia had survived the surgery, fear for her recovery, and a cold, clarifying anger toward the man who should have been sitting beside me through all of this. As I returned to the waiting room, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Officer Ketut Wira, Bali Police. We have located your husband. Surveillance has begun." The pediatric intensive care unit was eerily quiet, save for the rhythmic beeping of monitors and the soft whoosh of ventilators. Sophia looked impossibly small in the hospital bed, surrounded by machines that dwarfed her tiny frame. A thick bandage covered her chest where surgeons had worked to repair her damaged heart. Her face was pale, almost translucent under the harsh fluorescent lights, but her breathing was steady. I gently placed her purple unicorn beside her pillow, a familiar comfort for when she woke. As I settled into the recliner beside her bed, a chair I knew all too well from previous hospital stays, my mind drifted to how we had arrived at this moment. Not just the immediate crisis of Sophia's surgery and Charles's betrayal, but the longer journey that had led us here. Charles and I had met at a charity gala 9 years ago. I was working for a nonprofit focused on educational access. He was an investment banker whose firm had sponsored the event. He was charismatic, ambitious, and passionate about making a difference. Or so I believed. We married within a year, both of us certain we'd found our perfect match. The first years were good ones. We bought a house in a neighborhood with excellent schools, traveled during our anniversaries, and talked about the family we would build together. Charles was rising quickly at his firm, his natural charm and sharp business acumen opening doors that led to promotions and bonuses. I continued my work with the nonprofit, finding purpose in helping underprivileged children access educational opportunities. When I became pregnant with Sophia, Charles seemed genuinely excited. He attended every prenatal appointment, painted the nursery himself, and spent hours researching the safest car seats and strollers. I remember watching him assemble her crib, his brow furrowed in concentration, and feeling a wave of love so powerful it brought tears to my eyes. This was the family we had dreamed of creating. Sophia was born perfect, or so we thought. Her first months were textbook. She hit her milestones, charmed everyone with her bubbly personality, and filled our home with a joy neither of us had anticipated. But at her 6-month checkup, the pediatrician detected a heart murmur. "Probably nothing to worry about," she'd said, "but let's get an echocardiogram just to be sure." The diagnosis came like a thunderclap on a clear day: congenital mitral valve dysplasia. Sophia's heart valve hadn't formed properly and would eventually need surgical repair. The cardiologist assured us that many children with this condition led normal lives with proper monitoring and intervention, but the word eventually gave way to soon, as Sophia's condition deteriorated faster than anticipated. Her first surgery came at 18 months. I still remember carrying her into the operating room, her tiny body dressed in a miniature hospital gown, her wide eyes confused and frightened. Charles had been there then, holding my hand in the waiting room, bringing me coffee, and breaking down in tears of relief when the surgeon told us the procedure had been successful. For a while, our life took on a new normal. We adapted to Sophia's medication schedule, regular cardiology appointments, and activity restrictions. Charles threw himself into researching her condition, connecting with other parents in similar situations, and setting up the special medical fund to ensure she would always have the care she needed regardless of insurance challenges. But something shifted after her second surgery at age 4. This time, there had been complications, an infection that kept her hospitalized for weeks. The strain began to show in our marriage. Charles started staying later at the office, missing appointments, becoming irritable when discussing Sophia's care. I attributed it to stress, to fear, to the financial pressure of mounting medical bills even with insurance. "I can't keep watching her suffer," he had said one night, after a particularly difficult day when Sophia had been too weak to get out of bed. "It's destroying me." I had held him then, mistaking his words for the natural anguish of a father watching his child in pain. I didn't recognize it for what it was: the beginning of his retreat, his abandonment. A memory surfaced of a conversation just 3 months ago. We were at the kitchen table reviewing Sophia's medical expenses while she napped upstairs. "What about that new experimental treatment Dr. Reynolds mentioned?" I had asked, scrolling through research articles on my laptop. "The one being developed at Mayo Clinic?" Charles had sighed, rubbing his temples. "It's not covered by insurance. We'd have to pay out of pocket." "We have the medical fund," I'd pointed out. "That's exactly what it's for. That money needs to last," he'd snapped. "We can't blow it on unproven treatments." His reaction had seemed disproportionate, but I'd chalked it up to the stress we were both under. Now, sitting beside Sophia's hospital bed, I understood with sickening clarity. He'd already been planning his escape, already calculating how to use that money for himself instead of our daughter. The arrival of Paula into our lives had seemed innocent enough at first. Charles hired her as his administrative assistant about a year ago, and she quickly made herself indispensable to him. She was efficient, talented, and often worked late hours alongside Charles. Hours I now realized had nothing to do with work. There had been signs, of course. The sudden business trips that couldn't be rescheduled. The texts he shielded from my view. The new cologne he claimed was a gift from a client. The way he grew defensive when I asked simple questions about his day. Classic infidelity red flags that I had ignored or rationalized away because I couldn't imagine Charles abandoning Sophia. I couldn't fathom that anyone could turn their back on their own child, especially one as vulnerable and loving as our daughter. But now, as I watched Sophia's chest rise and fall with each breath, the full picture came into devastating focus. Charles hadn't just fallen for another woman. He had systematically planned an exit strategy that included stealing from our critically ill daughter. This wasn't a momentary lapse of judgment or a midlife crisis. This was calculated cruelty. My phone buzzed with another text from Officer Katut Weera. Surveillance photos attached. Confirmation needed that this is your husband. I opened the images with trembling fingers. There was Charles, lounging by an infinity pool that overlooked the ocean. Paula sat beside him in a bikini, laughing at something on her phone. They looked carefree, unburdened, as if there wasn't a 6-year-old girl fighting for her life half a world away. Before I could respond, another message appeared. We have also identified unusual property transaction. Foreign nationals cannot own property directly in Indonesia. Your husband is attempting to use local proxy. This is illegal. We need statement from you to proceed with investigation. I typed back immediately. Yes, that is my husband Charles Morgan and his assistant. Paula, I will provide whatever statement you need. As I set my phone down, Sophia stirred slightly. Her eyelids fluttered but didn't open. Her small hand twitched beside the purple unicorn. I leaned forward, stroking her hair gently. I'm here, sweetheart, I whispered. Mommy's right here. A nurse entered quietly to check Sophia's vitals. She's doing well, she assured me. Her numbers are looking good. Would you like me to bring you something to eat? You've been here for hours. I shook my head. I'm not hungry. You need to keep your strength up, she said kindly. For her. She was right, of course. I couldn't help Sophia if I collapsed from exhaustion and hunger. I couldn't fight for her if I didn't take care of myself. Maybe some soup, I conceded. And coffee. Definitely coffee. As the nurse left, my phone rang. It was Michael. Elizabeth, he said without preamble. The Bali police are building a case. But there's something else you should know. Charles has been making regular calls to your family lawyer for the past month. My contact at the firm says he's been inquiring about divorce proceedings. Divorce. The word should have devastated me. Instead, it felt like the final piece of a puzzle clicking into place. That's not all, Michael continued, his voice grave. He's been asking specifically about custody arrangements for a chronically ill child. My blood turned to ice. Custody. He abandoned her. He stole money meant for her care. People like Charles rewrite history to suit their narrative, Michael said. Be prepared. This is going to get uglier before it gets better. As I ended the call, Sophia's monitor beeped. A small irregularity in her heartbeat that quickly stabilized. I placed my hand gently on her arm, feeling the warmth of her skin, the pulse beneath my fingers. I won't let him take you, I promised, her softly. Not now. Not ever. The pediatric floor quieted as night fell. Nurses moved silently between rooms, checking vitals and administering medications with practiced efficiency. Sophia remained asleep, her small body working to recover from the trauma of surgery. Dr. Reynolds had stopped by earlier to report that all signs pointed toward a stable recovery, though she cautioned that the next 48 hours would remain critical. Alone, with my thoughts in the dim light of Sophia's hospital room, I found myself excavating memories, searching for signs I'd missed, warnings I'd ignored. Like an archaeologist brushing away layers of self-deception, I uncovered a pattern that had been there all along. 8 months ago, Charles had insisted on taking over management of our finances. You have enough on your plate with Sophia, he'd said, his tone reasonable, concerned. Let me handle the money stuff. It's what I do for a living, after all. I'd agreed, grateful for one less responsibility while managing Sophia's medical appointments, medications, and school accommodations. Charles had set up automatic payments for our bills and given me a credit card for daily expenses. I rarely checked our accounts after that, trusting him implicitly with our financial well-being. 6 months ago, he'd suggested moving Sophia's medical fund to a different bank. Their investment options are better, he'd explained. We could potentially grow the fund faster with their management. Again, I hadn't questioned him. Why would I? He was Sophia's father, as invested in her future as I was. Or so I believed. 5 months ago, he'd begun taking more business trips, each one seemingly longer than the last. The Singapore expansion is crucial for the firm, he'd explained as he packed for what would be the first of many absences. If I can make this work, we'll have more financial security for Sophia's treatments. He'd return from these trips distant, distracted, often working late into the night in his home office. I'd attributed it to work stress, to the pressure he felt as our family's provider. I'd tried to make things easier for him at home, shielding him from the daily challenges of Sophia's care, believing I was supporting him. 4 months ago, Paula had called our home for the first time. Charles left some important documents at the office, she'd explained, her voice professionally pleasant. He asked me to call and let you know he'll be working late to finish them. After that, the late nights became more frequent. The documents were always urgent, the meetings always crucial. Sometimes Charles wouldn't come home until I was already asleep, slipping into bed smelling of unfamiliar cologne and mouthwash. 3 months ago, Charles had missed Sophia's cardiology appointment, the first important medical visit he'd ever missed. "I'm sorry, honey," he'd said over the phone. "This client meeting came up suddenly. I'll make it up to you both." But he never did. Instead, he missed the next appointment too, and the one after that. 2 months ago, he'd suggested I take some time for myself. "You look exhausted," he'd said one evening, his tone solicitous. "Why don't you go visit your sister for a weekend? I can handle Sophia." I'd been touched by his concern, interpreting it as care rather than what it really was. An attempt to establish that he could manage Sophia alone, building a case for shared custody I didn't yet know he was planning. 1 month ago, I'd found a brochure for Bali in his briefcase while looking for a pen. "Just dreaming," he'd said with a laugh when I asked about it. "Maybe we can take a family trip when Sophia's stronger." The lies were so smooth, so reasonable, each one building on the last to create an architecture of deception I'd lived within without seeing the blueprint. A soft knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. A different nurse, older than the previous one, entered with a tray. "Chicken soup and coffee," she said quietly. "And I brought some fresh fruit. You need to eat." I thanked her, realizing I hadn't had a proper meal in over 24 hours. As she checked Sophia's IV and adjusted her blanket, I forced myself to eat a few spoonfuls of soup. "You're doing great, Mom," the nurse said kindly. "It's not easy being the strong one." Her words touched something raw inside me. "I don't feel strong," I admitted. "I feel blind, stupid." She paused, studying me with compassionate eyes. "I've been a PICU nurse for 27 years. You know what I've learned? That people like you, parents of sick kids, are carrying burdens most people can't imagine. You don't have the luxury of looking for betrayal. You're too busy fighting for your child." Her words weren't empty comfort. They contained a truth I needed to hear. I'd missed the signs of Charles's infidelity and financial fraud because my focus had been where it belonged, on Sophia. After the nurse left, I pulled out my phone and opened my photo gallery. I scrolled back through the months, studying pictures of Charles with new eyes. There it was, the subtle shift in his expressions. In older photos, he looked engaged, present, his arm around me, his smile reaching his eyes. But starting around 6 months ago, something changed. His smiles became perfunctory. In family photos, he stood slightly apart. In pictures with Sophia, his eyes held a distance that now seemed obvious. I continued scrolling until I found a specific image from about 4 months ago, Charles's company holiday party. I zoomed in on the background where Paula stood talking to colleagues. She was watching Charles, her expression holding something I hadn't noticed at the time. Possessiveness. My phone buzzed with an email notification from Ebony at the Amala Resort. "Elizabeth, I've compiled all financial transactions from Charles. Morgan's stay." I've also included surveillance images from our security system showing Charles and Paula together dating back to January of this year. This suggests this isn't their first visit to our resort. January, 5 months ago, when Charles had supposedly been in Singapore for the first time, I opened the attached photos. There they were, walking hand in hand on the beach, dining at the resort restaurant, entering their villa together. The timestamps confirmed what Ebony was suggesting. Their affair had been going on much longer than I'd realized, and Bali had been their meeting place multiple times. Another email arrived, this one from my bank confirming that they had frozen our joint accounts pending investigation of potential fraud. A small victory, but one that came too late to recover the money Charles had already transferred. My phone rang. A video call from an Indonesian number. "Mrs. Morgan, this is Officer Ketut Wira," said the man on screen. He appeared to be in his 40s with a serious expression and a police uniform. "I'm calling to update you on our investigation." "Have you arrested Charles?" I asked immediately. "Not yet," he replied. "We are building our case first. We have confirmed illegal activity related to the property purchase. Foreign nationals cannot directly own property in Indonesia. Your husband and Ms. Bennett were attempting to use a nominee arrangement, which is against Indonesian law." "Ms. Bennett?" I repeated, confused. "Paula Bennett, the woman with your husband," Officer Wira clarified. "We have also interviewed the property agent. He confirms that Mr. Morgan represented Ms. Bennett as his wife, as you, during negotiations." A fresh wave of anger washed over me. Charles hadn't just taken another woman to Bali. He had presented her as me, used my identity as part of his fraud. "There is something else," Officer Wira continued, his expression grave. "We have evidence suggesting Mr. Morgan may be planning to leave Bali soon. He has been making inquiries about private charters to Singapore." "He's running," I said, the realization dawning. "He knows the money transfers have been discovered." "That is our assessment as well," Officer Wira agreed. "We need your formal statement immediately if we are to take action before he leaves Indonesian jurisdiction." "I'll provide whatever you need," I assured him. As the call ended, I glanced at Sophia. In sleep, her face looked peaceful, unburdened by the complexities surrounding her. She deserved so much better than a father who could steal her future and run. I opened my laptop, determined to compile everything I had discovered. The financial records, the emails from Ebony, the photos of Charles and Paula, the evidence of identity fraud. Charles thought he had planned the perfect escape, but he had underestimated the resources I would find, the allies who would emerge, and most of all, the lengths to which I would go to protect our daughter. This wasn't just about a cheating husband anymore. This was about justice for Sophia, and I was just getting started. Morning arrived with a gentle shift in Sophia's condition. Her eyes fluttered open as sunlight filtered through the hospital blinds. For a moment, confusion clouded her features as she took in the unfamiliar ceiling, the medical equipment, the bandages on her chest. Then her gaze found me, and relief washed over her face. "Mommy," she whispered, her voice raspy from the breathing, tube that had been removed overnight. I was at her side instantly, carefully taking her small hand in mine. "I'm here, sweetheart. You did so well in surgery. The doctors fixed your heart." She nodded solemnly, accepting this information with the strange wisdom children sometimes possess in difficult moments. Her eyes darted around the room, searching for something or someone. "Where's Daddy?" she asked, the question I had been dreading. The easy path would have been another lie. "He's stuck at work. He's coming later. He sends his love." The words were there, ready to be spoken, a shield to protect her from a truth too heavy for her small shoulders. But looking into her trusting eyes, I realized that easy lies had facilitated Charles's betrayal. Easy lies had allowed him to construct his double life while I remained blind to what was happening. Before I could answer, Dr. Reynolds entered the room, bringing with her the brisk efficiency that had become a comfort over years of Sophia's treatment. "Good morning, Miss Sophia," she said warmly. "I'm so happy to see those eyes open." While Dr. Reynolds examined Sophia, checking her incision and listening to her heart, I stepped into the hallway to collect myself. My phone had accumulated several notifications overnight: emails from Michael with legal documents requiring my signature, updates from the bank's fraud department, and a text from Charles himself. I stared at his name on my screen, my thumb hovering over the message. After nearly a week of silence, after abandoning us during the worst crisis of our lives, what could he possibly have to say? I opened the text. "Elizabeth, I know you're upset. There are things you don't understand about our situation. Paula and I never meant for this to happen. I still care about Sophia, but I need to live my own life. I'm trying to arrange a settlement. That will be fair to everyone. Please don't do anything rash." The audacity of his words struck me like a physical blow. Things I don't understand? Never meant for this to happen? As if betrayal, theft, and abandonment were simply unfortunate accidents rather than deliberate choices he had made. And that final warning, "Don't do anything rash," revealed his true concern. Not Sophia's well-being, not the pain he had caused, only the consequences he now feared were coming. I was still staring at the message when Claudette arrived, carrying a tote bag filled with fresh clothes for me and new pajamas for Sophia. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said, noting my expression. Wordlessly, I showed her Charles's text. Her face hardened as she read. "The nerve," she whispered, handing my phone back. "After everything he's done." "He still doesn't know we've discovered the financial fraud," I said, "or that the Bali police are building a case. He thinks this is just about the affair." "Are you going to respond?" I shook my head. "Not yet." "Officer?" Weira advised against tipping him off. Dr. Reynolds emerged from Sophia's room, her clipboard tucked under her arm. "She's doing remarkably well," she reported. "Her vitals are strong, and the new valve is functioning properly. If this progress continues, we can move her to a regular room tomorrow." Relief flooded through me. "And long-term? You mentioned she'll need specialized care." Dr. Reynolds's expression turned more serious. "The replacement valve will need to be monitored regularly. As she grows, we'll need to assess whether additional surgeries will be necessary. There's also a specialized therapy program I'd recommend. It helps children with heart conditions rebuild strength safely." "Is that covered by insurance?" I asked, the financial reality of our situation weighing heavily on my mind. "Partially," Dr. Reynolds admitted, "but there would be significant out-of-pocket expenses. Expenses that should have been covered by Sophia's medical fund, the very money Charles had stolen to finance his new life." "I understand," I said, my resolve strengthening. "I'll figure it out." Dr. Reynolds studied me thoughtfully. "Elizabeth, I know this isn't just a medical crisis for your family. If you need resources, social workers, legal advisors, support groups, the hospital can help connect you." I thanked her, grateful for the offer, but aware that my situation had moved beyond the typical family crisis the hospital's resources were designed to address. As Dr. Reynolds walked away, my phone rang. It was Michael. "Elizabeth, we've got movement," he said without preamble. "The Bali police have issued a freeze on the property transaction. The real estate agent informed Charles this morning. My contact says he's not taking it well." "What does that mean?" "It means he knows something's wrong, but not exactly what. He's been making calls, including several to your joint bank. The bank, following our fraud alert, refused to release any information to him." I processed this information, picturing Charles's mounting panic as his carefully constructed plans began to unravel. "There's more," Michael continued. "Officer Weira has requested authorization for formal questioning. With your statement and the financial evidence, they have enough to bring him in." The moment felt pivotal. a point of no return. Once the Bali authorities officially questioned Charles, there would be no pretending this was a simple marital dispute. There would be legal consequences, possibly criminal charges. News that would eventually reach our friends, colleagues, and, most concerningly, Sophia. "Do it," I said, the words emerging with a certainty that surprised me. He needs to answer for what he's done. After ending the call, I returned to Sophia's room. Claudette had unpacked the new pajamas, soft cotton printed with stars and moons, and was gently helping Sophia change, careful of the IV lines and monitoring equipment. "Look, Mommy," Sophia said, her voice stronger now. "Aunt Claudette brought me space pajamas." "They're beautiful," I said, managing a genuine smile despite the storm of emotions inside me. "How are you feeling, sweetheart?" "My chest hurts," she admitted. "But Nurse Jenny said it's because the doctors fixed my heart, so it's a good hurt." Her simple acceptance of pain as part of healing struck me profoundly. While I had been protecting her from difficult truths, she had been demonstrating a strength I hadn't fully appreciated. A resilience born from facing physical challenges beyond what most adults ever experience. "Sophia," I said, sitting carefully, on the edge of her bed. "I need to tell you something about Daddy." Claudette shot me a concerned look, but I had made my decision. No more lies, not even comfortable ones. "Daddy isn't coming to the hospital," I said gently. "He's very far away right now, and he's going to be far away for a long time." Sophia's brow furrowed. "Because of his important work trip?" "No, sweetheart. Daddy made some choices that mean he can't be with us right now. It's not because of you. It's not because of your heart. It's because of choices that grown-ups sometimes make." Tears welled in her eyes. "Doesn't he want to see me?" The question broke my heart, but I refused to offer false comfort. "I think part of him does. But Daddy is very confused right now about what's important." Sophia was quiet for a long moment, processing this in her own way. "Is that why he didn't come when I had to ride in the ambulance?" The fact that she had noticed, had been aware of his absence even then, made my throat tighten with emotion. "Yes, that's why." "Are you going to go away too?" she asked, her voice small and frightened. "Never," I promised fiercely, carefully gathering her into a gentle embrace, mindful of her incision and tubes. "I will always be right here with you, no matter what." As I held her, my phone buzzed with another notification. Officer Weira had sent a message. "Charles Morgan has been brought in for questioning. We have secured his passport. He will not be leaving Bali until this matter is resolved." In that moment, cradling my daughter while justice began its slow, inexorable process half a world away, I experienced a clarity I had never known before. The path forward would be difficult, financially, legally, emotionally, but for the first time, I could see it clearly, unmarred by deception or false hope. Charles had believed he held all the power. He had counted on my distraction, my trust, my fear of disrupting Sophia's life. But as I felt my daughter's heart beating against mine, strong despite everything it had endured, I recognized a truth he had fatally miscalculated. There was nothing I wouldn't do to protect her. Nothing. By the next afternoon, Sophia had been moved from the PICU to a regular pediatric room, a small victory in our ongoing battle. The new room felt less intimidating with its colorful walls and large window overlooking the hospital garden. Sophia was sitting up in bed, carefully coloring in a picture book Claudette had brought, her movements slow but determined. Her resilience continued to amaze me. I sat in the chair beside her bed, laptop open, methodically documenting everything for the legal proceedings that now seemed inevitable. Michael had connected me with Bobby Fraser, a family law attorney specializing in cases involving financial fraud. We had a video consultation scheduled for later that day. My phone rang, Officer Weira calling from Bali. "I'm going to step into the hallway for a moment, sweetheart," I told Sophia, who nodded without looking up from her coloring. In the quiet corridor, I answered the call, bracing myself for whatever new development had occurred. Mrs. Morgan, Officer Weira began, his voice formal but not unkind. I'm calling to update you on our investigation. We questioned your husband for several hours yesterday. He initially denied all allegations. Initially? I asked, catching the implication. Yes, when presented with evidence of the financial transactions and property fraud, his position changed. He has admitted to transferring funds from your daughter's medical account and attempting to purchase property illegally. My heart raced. I hadn't expected Charles to confess so quickly. However, Officer Weira continued, he insists that the money was rightfully his to use. He claims you had abandoned your marital responsibilities and that he needed to secure his future, as you were emotionally unstable due to your daughter's illness. The accusation hit like a slap. After everything, the years spent caring for Sophia, the sleepless nights in hospital rooms, the careful management of her medications and appointments, Charles was painting me as unstable, as neglectful. That's absurd, I said, my voice tight, with anger. I have documentation of every doctor's appointment, every medication schedule, every school accommodation meeting, all of which I attended alone because he chose not to be present. We understand, Mrs. Morgan, Officer Weira assured me. His claims contradict the evidence we've gathered. But you should be aware that he's attempting to shape a narrative. Is he still in custody? No. He has been released but is prohibited from leaving Bali. His passport has been confiscated, and he must report to the police station daily. The formal charges are being processed now: wire fraud, attempted property fraud, and potentially identity theft related to his misrepresentation of Ms. Bennett as you. After ending the call, I leaned against the wall, processing this new information. Charles was building a defense based on portraying me as an unstable mother, a strategy that made my blood boil not just for my sake, but for every parent who had ever devoted themselves to a chronically ill child. When I returned to Sophia's room, Claudette was there, having arrived during my call. She took one look at my face and knew something had happened. Sophia, why don't we see if we can find that puppet show on TV you like? She suggested, turning on the television mounted on the wall. Once Sophia was distracted, Claudette pulled me into the far corner of the room. What is it? She whispered. I summarized Officer Weira's call, watching as Claudette's expression shifted from concern to outrage. He's calling you unstable? You? After everything you've done for Sophia while he was off playing house with his assistant? Her voice rose slightly before she caught herself, glancing at Sophia to ensure she hadn't heard. He's desperate, I said quietly. He's facing serious charges in Indonesia and knows he'll face more when he returns to the States. He's trying to create a defense. It won't work, Claudette insisted. Not when everyone who knows you can testify to your devotion to Sophia. Her confidence bolstered me, but a nagging worry remained. Charles had always been persuasive, skilled at spinning narratives that served his interests. I couldn't underestimate his ability to manipulate others, especially in legal proceedings where perception could sometimes outweigh reality. My laptop chimed with an incoming email, a formal statement from the Indonesian authorities requesting additional documentation of Sophia's medical condition and the purpose of the fund Charles had misappropriated. I began gathering the records immediately, a task made easier by my habitual organization of Sophia's medical history. As I worked, a peculiar sensation settled over me. For days, I'd been reacting to Charles's betrayal, shocked, hurt, angry, determined. But now, as I assembled evidence that would help hold him accountable, I felt something unexpected. Power. Not the vindictive power of revenge, but the steady strength of advocacy. I wasn't just a victim of Charles's deception. I was Sophia's defender, her voice, her champion. The hospital's social worker, Ms. Patel, stopped by later that afternoon to check on us. After briefly chatting with Sophia about her favorite cartoon characters, she asked to speak with me privately in the family consultation room across the hall. "Dr. Reynolds mentioned your situation," she said once we were seated. "I understand you're facing some significant challenges beyond Sophia's medical needs." I nodded, expecting the usual offers of support groups and counseling referrals, valuable resources, but not what I needed most at the moment. "I've worked with families in crisis for 15 years, Ms. Patel continued, surprising me with her directness. "And I've seen many situations where medical emergencies expose or create deeper family fractures. What your husband has done is not just a personal betrayal. It's a form of financial abuse that directly impacts your daughter's care." Her frank assessment was refreshing after days of carefully measured words from doctors and nurses. "The hospital has resources that might help," she continued, pulling out a folder. "There's an emergency fund for families facing financial hardship due to medical crises. It won't replace everything that was taken, but it could help with immediate expenses while the legal issues are resolved." She handed me an application form, then reached into her briefcase and withdrew another document. "This is something else you should consider. It's information about obtaining an emergency custody order based on parental abandonment and financial exploitation. If your husband is building a case for shared custody as you suspect, you'll want to be proactive." I stared at the document, the reality of what lay ahead settling over me. This wasn't just about recovering stolen funds or seeing Charles face consequences for his actions. This was about legally protecting Sophia from a father who had proven himself untrustworthy with her well-being. "I never wanted this for her," I said quietly. "I never wanted her to grow up in a broken home, shuttled between parents, explaining to friends why her dad isn't around." Ms. Patel's expression softened. "Elizabeth, forgive my bluntness, but your home was broken the moment your husband chose to abandon his child and steal money meant for her care. What you're doing now isn't breaking your family, it's protecting what remains of it." Her words crystallized something I'd been feeling but couldn't quite articulate. I wasn't destroying our family unit. Charles had already done that. I was salvaging what mattered most: Sophia's security, her future, her trust in at least one parent who would never abandon her. "Thank you," I said, tucking the documents into my bag, "for seeing this for what it is." When I returned to Sophia's room, she had fallen asleep, her coloring book still open beside her. I gently moved it to the bedside table, noticing the picture she'd been working on: a family of elephants, the largest one colored in vivid purple, her favorite color. "The mommy elephant is purple because she's magic," Sophia had explained earlier. "She can protect the baby elephant from anything." Looking at her peaceful face, I made a silent vow. I had failed to see Charles's betrayal until it was too late, but I wouldn't fail at this. I would be the mother Sophia deserved, strong enough to face the truth, brave enough to protect her, and honest enough to help her understand the difficult changes ahead. My phone chimed with a calendar reminder for my upcoming consultation with Bobby Fraser. I settled into the chair beside Sophia's bed, opened my laptop, and prepared to transform from a woman blindsided by betrayal into an advocate armed with evidence, determination, and the fiercest love a mother could possess. Charles had chosen his path. Now I was choosing mine. 5 days after Sophia's surgery, the doctors deemed her stable enough to return home. Her recovery would be a long process: physical, therapy, medication adjustments, regular checkups. But she was healing well, her strength returning a little more each day. As we prepared to leave the hospital, Dr. Reynolds reviewed her care instructions one final time. "Remember, no strenuous activity for at least 6 weeks," she cautioned. "The home health nurse will visit twice weekly to check her incision and vitals, and I want to see her back here next Thursday for a follow-up echocardiogram." I nodded. mentally adding these new appointments to the calendar I'd been maintaining since Sophia's diagnosis 3 years ago. And Elizabeth, Dr. Reynolds added, her tone softening, take care of yourself too. Sophia needs you healthy and strong. The drive home felt surreal. Sophia dozed in her booster seat, exhausted from the simple act of changing clothes and being wheeled to the car. Claudette had gone ahead to prepare the house, stocking the refrigerator and setting up Sophia's bedroom with extra pillows for comfort. As I pulled into our driveway, the sight of our home struck me differently than it had just a week ago. The colonial-style house with its neat garden and wraparound porch had once represented the life Charles and I had built together. Now it felt like a crime scene, a place where years of deception had unfolded beneath a veneer of domestic normality. Claudette met us at the door, helping me settle Sophia in her bedroom before pulling me aside. Bobby Fraser called, she whispered. He's found something in Charles's financial records. He wants to meet as soon as possible. Did he say what it was? She shook her head. Just that it was significant and involved more than the medical fund. While Claudette stayed with Sophia, I set up my laptop in the home office, a room I had rarely used before Charles's betrayal, but had now claimed as command central for my investigation. Bobby had agreed to a video call since I couldn't leave. Sophia. At precisely 2 p.m., Bobby's face appeared on my screen. In his mid-50s with salt and pepper hair and wire-rimmed glasses, he projected the competent assurance I desperately needed. Elizabeth, thank you for making time, he began. I know you're juggling a lot with Sophia's recovery. What have you found? I asked, too mentally exhausted for small talk. We've been tracing the money Charles transferred out of Sophia's medical fund and your joint savings, he explained, sharing his screen to show a complex flowchart of financial transactions. Most of it went to accounts in Bali, as we suspected, funding the resort stay and property purchase, but approximately $95,000 was diverted elsewhere. He highlighted a section of the chart showing transfers to an account I didn't recognize. This is a private investment account Charles opened 18 months ago, Bobby continued. He's been making regular deposits, small enough to avoid triggering alerts, $2,000 here, $5,000 there, building a separate financial life right under your nose. The timeline hit me hard. 18 months ago, well before Sophia's condition had worsened, before Paula had entered the picture. Charles's exit strategy wasn't a recent development. It had been in motion for over a year. There's more, Bobby said, his expression grave. We've discovered evidence that Charles has been systematically inflating your household expenses and pocketing the difference. Mortgage payments, insurance premiums, even Sophia's medical bills, he's been reporting higher amounts to you than he was actually paying. The revelation stunned me. While I had been focusing on Sophia's care, trusting Charles to handle our finances, he had been embezzling from our family budget bit by bit. For how long? I managed to ask. Based on the records we've obtained so far, at least 2 years, Bobby replied. And Elizabeth, there's something else you should know. Charles made a call to your family lawyer yesterday, from Bali. What did he want? He inquired about divorce proceedings, specifically whether he could file from abroad. He also asked about Indonesia's non-extradition status with the United States. The implication was clear. Charles was investigating whether he could divorce me from Bali while avoiding potential criminal charges in the U.S. Can he do that? I asked, a new fear taking hold. Not effectively, Bobby assured me. Indonesia and the U.S. may not have an extradition treaty, but that doesn't mean he can hide there forever. More importantly, any divorce filing would have to address the financial fraud, which would strengthen our position regarding both asset division and custody. After the call ended, I sat motionless, trying to process the extent of Charles's deception. This wasn't just opportunistic theft committed in the heat of a passionate affair. This was calculated, long-term fraud, a deliberate strategy executed over years while I focused on keeping our daughter alive. My phone buzzed with a text from Michael. Indonesian prosecutor wants to speak with you. Important development. Can you talk now? I immediately called him back. Elizabeth, Michael answered without preamble. The prosecutor handling Charles's case has found emails between Charles and Paula dating back 14 months. They've been planning this move to Bali for nearly a year. Bobby just told me Charles has had a secret account for 18 months, I said. It all fits the same timeline. There's something else, Michael continued. The emails reference a contingency plan if Sophia's condition became too much. They were specifically waiting for a medical crisis to make their move, knowing you'd be too distracted to notice the financial irregularities. The calculated cruelty of it knocked the breath from my lungs. They hadn't just taken advantage of Sophia's medical emergency. They had been waiting for it, planning around it, maybe even hoping for it. The prosecutor believes this strengthens the case significantly, Michael added. It demonstrates premeditation and exploitation of a vulnerable child, which carries heavier penalties under Indonesian law. After hanging up, I found myself drawn to Charles's home office, a space I had avoided since discovering his betrayal. If he had been plotting this for so long, what other evidence might he have left behind? The room was impeccably organized, reflecting Charles's meticulous nature. His desk held the usual items: a computer monitor, a desk lamp, a container of pens. The filing cabinet in the corner was locked, but I knew where Charles kept the key, in a small box on the top shelf of his closet. Once I retrieved it, I began methodically going through each drawer, scanning documents, taking photos of anything that seemed relevant. Most files contained standard financial records: tax returns, investment statements, property documents, nothing immediately incriminating until I reached the bottom drawer. There, in a folder marked Personal, I found a life insurance policy I'd never seen before. Charles had taken out a $2 million policy on himself 2 years ago, with Paula listed as the sole beneficiary. The date on the policy stopped me cold. It was just 3 weeks after Sophia's second surgery, when she'd suffered complications and spent weeks in the hospital. While I had been sleeping in a chair beside our daughter's hospital bed, Charles had been planning for Paula's financial security. Beneath the policy lay printed emails between Charles and a property management company in Bali, discussing rental prospects for luxury villas. With proper management, you could see returns of 15–20% annually on your investment, the agent had written. Charles had highlighted that section and scrawled financial security for P in the margin. My hands shook as I continued searching, uncovering more evidence of Charles's double life. Brochures for Balinese properties, notes about Indonesian residency requirements, even Indonesian language learning materials with common phrases translated into English. One page had "No extradition" to U.S., underlined multiple times. The most damning discovery came at the very bottom of the drawer: a notebook containing detailed calculations of Sophia's medical expenses versus the balance of her medical fund. Charles had been treating our daughter's healthcare fund like a personal investment portfolio, calculating exactly how much he could siphon without being detected. I photographed everything, my movements mechanical, my mind struggling to reconcile the man I had married with the person revealed in these documents. This wasn't just betrayal, it was a complete absence of basic human empathy. Toward me, toward our marriage, but most unforgivably, toward our critically ill child. As I replaced the documents and locked the cabinet, Claudette appeared in the doorway. "Sophia's asking for you," she said. She woke up a little disoriented. I nodded, tucking my phone with its damning photos into my pocket. The evidence I'd gathered would go to Bobby Fraser, to Officer Weira, to the prosecutor's building. Their case. But right now, my daughter needed me. As I headed toward Sophia's room, I realized my hands had stopped shaking. The shock was giving way to a cold, focused clarity. Charles had spent years calculating his escape, meticulously planning how to extract maximum financial benefit before abandoning us. Now it was my turn to be methodical, to use every resource available to ensure his plans collapsed around him. 2 weeks after Sophia's discharge from the hospital, a new routine had established itself in our home. Mornings were filled with medication, schedules, and gentle physical therapy exercises. Afternoons often brought visits from the home health nurse or video calls with Dr. Reynolds. Evenings were for quiet activities, reading stories, watching movies, or coloring in the new art supplies Claudette had brought. Throughout it all, Sophia was regaining strength, her resilience a constant source of amazement. The legal proceedings against Charles were advancing on multiple fronts. In Indonesia, he faced charges related to financial fraud and illegal property transactions. The prosecutor had frozen his assets in Bali, including the down payment on the beach villa. Domestically, Bobby Fraser was building a comprehensive case addressing the financial theft, the divorce Charles had inquired about, and the custody arrangements that would best protect Sophia. I had just finished helping Sophia with her lunch when my phone rang, an unfamiliar number with an Indonesian country code, but not Officer Wira's. Curious, I answered. Mrs. Morgan? This is Ebony Williams from Amala Resort in Bali, the now familiar voice said. I have information you should know. Has something happened with Charles? I asked, stepping into the hallway to keep the conversation private from Sophia. He checked out of the resort yesterday, Ebony reported. Despite the travel restrictions, he's attempting to leave Bali. One of our staff overheard him discussing arrangements for a private boat to take him to a neighboring island, where he apparently plans to catch a flight to Singapore. My pulse quickened. The police have his passport. How would he travel internationally? Mrs. Morgan, people with enough money can obtain false documentation, especially in this region, Ebony explained, her tone grave. I've already alerted Officer Wira, but I thought you should know directly. Thank you, I said, genuinely grateful for her continued assistance. Where is Paula? Is she leaving with him? There was a pause on the line before Ebony replied. That's the other reason I'm calling. Ms. Bennett left 3 days ago, alone. There was an argument, loud enough that security was called to their villa. She departed the following morning. This was unexpected. I had imagined Charles and Paula as a united front, conspirators in their shared betrayal. The thought of discord between them opened new questions. Did you hear what the argument was about? I asked. Not specifically, Ebony admitted. But afterward, Mr. Morgan made several calls, including one where he clearly said, "She knows too much. We need to contain this." He seemed desperate. After thanking Ebony for the information, I immediately called Officer Wira, who confirmed they were aware of Charles's attempted escape plan and had increased surveillance on him. We have officers monitoring all marinas and private docks, he assured me. He will not leave Bali undetected. Next, I contacted Bobby Fraser to update him on this development. His response was measured but concerned. This suggests Charles is panicking, he observed, which means he might make more mistakes, but it also means he could become more dangerous, destroying evidence, moving remaining assets, or attempting to shape public perception before charges are formally filed. What should I do? I asked. Continue. Documenting everything, Bobby advised. And Elizabeth, be prepared for Charles to reach out directly. If he's truly desperate, he may try to manipulate you into helping him. As if summoned by Bobby's warning, a text from Charles arrived that evening while I was reading Sophia a bedtime story. I ignored it until she had fallen asleep, her unicorn clutched tightly against her side. Once in the hallway, I opened the B message. Elizabeth, things have gotten out of hand. This has all been a massive misunderstanding. Paula has betrayed me just like I betrayed you. I made a terrible mistake. Please call me. For Sophia's sake, if not for mine. The transparent attempt at manipulation was almost laughable. After stealing our daughter's medical fund, abandoning her during critical surgery, and attempting to flee justice, Charles was now playing the victim and invoking Sophia's name to elicit sympathy. I didn't respond. The next morning brought another, unexpected development. Michael called while I was helping Sophia with her breathing exercises. The Indonesian authorities have located Paula Bennett, he reported. She didn't leave the country after all. She's checked into a small hotel on the other side of the island under her maiden name, Lee. Have they questioned her? I asked. Yes, and this is where it gets interesting, Michael continued. She's offered to provide evidence against Charles in exchange for immunity from prosecution. According to my contact, she claims she didn't know the full extent of Charles's financial fraud until recently. Do you believe her? I asked skeptically. It doesn't matter what I believe, Michael replied pragmatically. What matters is that she has access to information and evidence that could strengthen the case against Charles. The prosecutor is considering her offer. Later that afternoon, while Sophia napped, I received an email from an address I didn't recognize. Paula.emailprovider.com. The subject line read simply, "The truth about Charles." My finger hovered over the delete button, tempted to dismiss anything Paula might have to say as self-serving lies. But curiosity won out. I opened the email. Elizabeth, it began. You have every reason to hate me and no reason to trust anything I say. But there are things about Charles you need to know, not for my sake, but for Sophia's protection. The email continued, explaining that Paula had indeed been involved with Charles for nearly a year, believing his stories about an unhappy marriage to a wife obsessed with their daughter's illness to the exclusion of their relationship. According to Paula, Charles had told her the medical fund was mostly insurance money that was being wasted on experimental treatments, instead of giving Sophia a normal life. I believed him, Paula wrote, until I saw the notebook where he calculated exactly how much he could take from Sophia's fund without you noticing. Until I found documentation about other families he's manipulated over the years. Elizabeth. Charles has done this before. You and Sophia aren't his first victims. My breath caught in my throat. Other families? The implication was staggering. I read on, my hands shaking. Before he met you, Charles was briefly married to a woman named Carla Winters. She had a son from a previous relationship who developed leukemia. Charles convinced her to create a medical fund, then disappeared with the money when the boy's condition worsened. He changed his name from Charles Miller to Charles Morgan and moved to a different state, where he eventually met you. Paula explained that she had discovered this information accidentally while helping Charles organize some old financial documents. When confronted, he had first denied everything, then threatened her when she said she would go to the authorities. That's when I realized I was just another pawn in his game, she wrote. I've provided everything I know to the Indonesian prosecutor, including documents Charles doesn't realize I copied. I'm not asking for forgiveness. But please, for Sophia's sake, be careful. He's more dangerous than either of us initially understood. The email ended with a link to a secured cloud folder containing scanned documents, newspaper clippings about Carla Winters and her son, court records of their divorce, and financial statements showing patterns identical to what Charles had. Done with our accounts. I sat frozen at my desk, the implications washing over me in waves. Charles wasn't just a cheating husband who had succumbed to temptation. He wasn't even just a financial criminal who had stolen from his family. He was a predator who specifically targeted vulnerable families with sick children, positioning himself to exploit their distraction and desperation before moving on to his next victims. With shaking hands, I forwarded the email and documents to Bobby Fraser, Michael, and Officer Wira. Then I sat back, a strange calm settling over me despite the horrifying revelations. The man I had married, the father of my child, was a stranger, had always been a stranger, his true nature concealed behind a carefully constructed persona designed to gain access to my life, my trust, and ultimately, to Sophia's medical fund. The sound of Sophia calling my name from her bedroom pulled me back to the present moment. As I rose to check on her, my phone rang once more. It was Officer Weira. "Mrs. Morgan," he said, his voice tense with urgency. "Charles Morgan has escaped police surveillance. We believe he is attempting to leave the country through illegal channels, and we have reason to believe he may try to contact you directly." Officer Weira's warning about Charles's escape echoed in my mind as I helped Sophia get ready for bed that evening. She'd had a good day. Her appetite was improving, and she'd managed to walk from her bedroom to the living room with minimal assistance. Small victories that would have filled me with simple joy before, but now were shadowed by a new, lurking fear. I checked the locks twice before settling onto the couch in the living room, my laptop open to review the documents Paula had provided. The evidence was overwhelming. Charles had used almost identical tactics with Carla Winters, establishing trust, creating financial entanglements, and then disappearing with funds meant for her son's medical care. The patterns were so similar it was almost as if he were following a playbook. Claudette had insisted on staying overnight, concerned about Charles potentially trying to make contact. She was in the guest room down the hall, close enough to hear, if anything happened, but giving me space to process the cascading revelations of the past weeks. Just after midnight, my phone lit up with an incoming call, Charles's number. My heart raced as I debated whether to answer. Bobby had advised documenting all contact, and the call recording app he'd recommended was already installed on my phone. After 3 rings, I accepted the call. Elizabeth. Charles's voice was smooth, controlled, the same tone he'd used countless times to convince clients to trust his investment advice. "I'm glad you picked up. We need to talk." "About what, Charles?" I kept my voice level, pressing the record button. "Your escape from police surveillance? Your history with Carla Winters? Or perhaps the fact that you stole our daughter's medical fund while she was fighting for her life?" There was a brief pause before he responded, his tone shifting to one of wounded innocence. "You've been talking to Paula. You can't believe anything she says. She's trying to save herself by throwing me under the bus." "The court records about your previous marriage aren't lies, Charles. Neither are the bank transfers from Sophia's account." "Elizabeth, please." His voice softened, taking on the persuasive tone I'd once found so comforting. "This has all spiraled, out of control. I made some terrible mistakes, but I never meant to hurt Sophia. You know how much I love her. Do I?" The calm in my voice surprised me. "Because the Charles Morgan I thought I knew wouldn't have abandoned his daughter during heart surgery. He wouldn't have stolen money meant for her care." "I can explain everything," he insisted. "The money, it wasn't stolen. I was investing it, trying to grow it for Sophia's future treatments. Things just got complicated with Paula. She manipulated me, made me believe we could have a different life. But my eyes are open now. I want to come home, to make things right." The audacity of his lies might have been laughable if they weren't so calculated. I could almost picture him rehearsing this conversation, fine-tuning his excuses to hit the perfect notes of contrition and victimhood. "Where are you, Charles?" I asked, pretending to soften. "I can't say exactly," he hedged. "There's been a misunderstanding with the local authorities, but I'm working to resolve it so I can come back to you and Sophia." "And the money?" I pressed. "The $250,000 you took from Sophia's medical fund and our savings? It's safe," he assured me quickly. "Most of it, anyway. The property deal in Bali fell through. That's why Paula left. She was just after the money. But I can recover it, Elizabeth. I can make everything right again." "How would that work exactly?" I asked, maintaining the pretense of consideration while silently motioning to Claudette, who had appeared in the doorway. She nodded and slipped away, phone in hand, calling Michael as we had planned if Charles made contact. "I need a small favor first," Charles said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "My current situation is complicated. I need access to the emergency credit card in my desk drawer. If you could read me the number, I can arrange transportation back to the States." Once I'm home, we can sort everything out properly. The emergency credit card, a high-limit card, Charles, had insisted we keep for medical crises. I had found it while searching his office, along with documentation showing he had recently increased its limit to $50,000. Another resource he had planned to exploit. "You want me to help you flee from criminal charges?" I clarified, letting my tone harden slightly. "These aren't real charges, Elizabeth," he insisted, desperation creeping into his voice. "It's all a misunderstanding that's been blown out of proportion. Paula has been feeding lies to the authorities. I'm the victim here." Like Carla Winters was the victim? Like her son with leukemia was the victim? His silence spoke volumes. "How many others were there, Charles?" I asked quietly. "How many families have you targeted? How many sick children have you exploited?" "You don't understand," he began, but I cut him off. "I understand perfectly. You select your victims carefully. Families with critically ill children, mothers too distracted by medical crises to notice financial irregularities. You establish trust, create dependency, then strip them of resources, before disappearing to start the cycle again. The only difference this time is that you got caught. Elizabeth, be reasonable," he pleaded, abandoning the victim narrative for a more urgent approach. "If you help me now, I can make sure you and Sophia are taken care of. If you don't, well, think about what happens to Sophia's ongoing care without my income, without my insurance coverage." The threat was thinly veiled but unmistakable. Help, him escape, or watch our daughter suffer the consequences. It was his final, desperate attempt at manipulation, and it failed completely. "Goodbye, Charles," I said calmly. "The authorities already know about this call. They're tracing your location as we speak." I ended the call and sat motionless, letting the recording save properly before sending it to Bobby, Michael, and Officer Weira. Charles's desperate attempt to manipulate me into helping him had only provided more evidence of his guilt and his willingness to use Sophia as leverage. Claudette returned to the living room, her expression grim. "Michael says they've narrowed down his location to the southern part of the island. The police are closing in." I nodded, a strange sense of calm settling over me. Charles had shown his true face at last, stripped of the charm and reasonableness that had once blinded me to his true nature. His call hadn't been an attempt at reconciliation. It had been a last-ditch effort to exploit what he believed was my remaining vulnerability to his manipulation. He had miscalculated badly. Charles's phone call had clarified something important. This battle was far from over. While he might soon face legal consequences for his actions, I needed to prepare for the long-term protection of Sophia and our future. The next morning, I called Bobby Fraser to develop a comprehensive strategy. "His call last night gives us additional leverage," Bobby explained as we video-conferenced. "The recorded threats regarding Sophia's medical care demonstrate his willingness to use her well-being as a manipulation tactic. That strengthens our case for full custody with no visitation rights." "What about financial recovery?" I asked. "Sophia's medical expenses won't wait for legal proceedings to conclude." "I've been working on that," Bobby assured me. "The emergency freeze on Charles's domestic accounts has been approved. We're also filing for emergency spousal and child support based on his documented income before he fled." Bobby shared his screen, showing a detailed timeline of legal filings and expected outcomes. "The hospital's assistance program has approved your application for immediate help with Sophia's current expenses. Michael's contact at the FBI has also expressed interest in Charles's case, given the interstate and international nature of his financial crimes." I nodded, taking notes as Bobby continued outlining the legal strategy. The picture he painted was complex but reassuring, a methodical approach to holding Charles accountable while securing Sophia's future. After the call ended, I focused on another crucial task: documenting everything about Sophia's medical history and care. I created detailed spreadsheets of her medications, treatments, doctors, and upcoming appointments. I organized her medical records chronologically, highlighting critical information about her condition and surgical history. If I needed to prove my competence as Sophia's caregiver against Charles's false claims, I would be prepared. Claudette arrived that afternoon with news from Michael. "They've located Charles," she reported. "He was trying to board a fishing boat to a neighboring island. The Bali police have him in custody now." Relief washed over me, but it was tempered by the knowledge that Charles's arrest was just one step in a longer journey. There would be court proceedings, possibly in multiple countries. There would be publicity once the story broke. Most challenging of all, there would eventually be difficult conversations with Sophia about her father's actions and absence. "There's something else," Claudette added, her expression softening. "Dad found Carla Winters." My breath caught. "Charles's previous wife? Is she willing to talk to us?" Claudette nodded. "More than willing. She's been following the case through Dad's updates. She wants to help in any way she can, including testifying about Charles's pattern of behavior." That evening, while Sophia slept, I spoke with Carla by phone. Her voice was warm but carried the unmistakable weight of someone who had traversed difficult terrain. "I should have done more to warn others about him," she said, regret coloring her words. "After he disappeared with Matthew's treatment fund, I was so focused on saving my son that I let Charles escape accountability." "How is Matthew now?" asked, almost afraid of the answer. "He survived," Carla said, her voice brightening slightly. "It was touch and go for a while. I had to declare bankruptcy to cover his medical costs after Charles cleaned us out, but Matthew's been in remission for 3 years now." Her story bolstered my resolve. If Carla could rebuild from the devastation Charles had caused, so could Sophia and I. The next day brought another important step in our preparation. Ms. Patel, the hospital social worker, connected me with a child psychologist specializing in parental abandonment and betrayal. "Sophia will have questions as she gets older," Dr. Hansen explained during our initial consultation. "The goal isn't to shield her from the truth, but to present it in age-appropriate ways that don't burden her with adult concerns or damage her sense of self-worth." She provided resources, recommended books, and offered a framework for explaining difficult realities to Sophia as she matured. Most importantly, she helped me understand that protecting Sophia didn't mean hiding the truth. It meant creating a narrative she could process without internalizing her father's abandonment as a reflection on her value. With each step, each conversation, each document filed, I was building a foundation for our future, one where Sophia's well-being was protected, Charles's ability to harm us was contained, and our path forward was clear. The legal battle would be long, the emotional journey complex, but for the first time since discovering Charles's betrayal, I felt truly prepared. Charles had spent years plotting his escape. I was now equally methodical in ensuring he would face justice and never harm Sophia again. 1 month after Charles's arrest in Bali, I sat in a sterile conference room at the federal courthouse, waiting for the moment I had both dreaded and anticipated. The Indonesian authorities had expedited his extradition once the FBI became involved, prioritizing the domestic charges of wire fraud and theft. Now, as part of the pre-trial proceedings, I would face Charles for the first time since discovering his betrayal. Sophia was at home with Claudette, blissfully unaware of today's significance. At 6 years old, she understood only that her father had made bad choices and needed to fix his mistakes. The full truth would come later, when she was ready. The door opened and Charles entered, escorted by 2 U.S. Marshals. He wore an orange jumpsuit, his wrists shackled in front of him, a stark contrast to the polished investment banker I had married. Yet his demeanor remained unchanged, shoulders back, expression controlled, eyes calculating. When he saw me, he attempted a smile, as if we were meeting for lunch rather than a deposition in his criminal case. "Elizabeth," he said, his voice smooth as ever. "You're looking well." Bobby Fraser, seated beside me, placed a warning hand on my arm, reminding me to maintain composure. Across the table, the federal prosecutor arranged his documents while Charles's defense attorney whispered in his ear. "We're here to discuss the terms of a potential plea agreement," the prosecutor began. "Mr. Morgan has expressed interest in cooperating in exchange for consideration during sentencing." Charles leaned forward. "Elizabeth, this doesn't have to be so adversarial. I've made mistakes, but we can resolve this reasonably, for Sophia's sake." His invocation of our daughter's name ignited something inside me. "Don't you dare use her name," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "Not after what you've done." "What I've done was desperate, not malicious," he countered, slipping into his well-practiced role of misunderstood victim. "If you'd been more attentive to our marriage instead of obsessing over Sophia's every sniffle—" "Your Honor," Bobby interrupted, addressing the judge observing the proceedings, "Mr. Morgan is attempting to badger and blame the victim of his crimes." The judge nodded. "Mr. Morgan, you'll refrain from such comments or this deposition will end immediately." Charles's facade cracked slightly, revealing a flash of the anger beneath. "You've destroyed everything we built," he hissed at me. "Turned my own sister against me. Poisoned my relationship with my daughter." "No, Charles," I replied calmly, sliding a document across the table. "This is what destroyed everything. It was the notebook from his office, the one with calculations of how much he could steal from Sophia's medical fund without detection." His face paled as he recognized it. "You targeted me," I continued, my voice gaining strength. "Just like you targeted Carla Winters. You saw a mother distracted by her child's illness and recognized an opportunity. But this time, you failed. This time, you'll pay for what you've done." For the first time since I'd known him, Charles Morgan had nothing to say. The weeks following my confrontation with Charles brought a whirlwind of legal proceedings and life-altering decisions. Charles ultimately accepted a plea deal. 15 years in federal prison for wire fraud, financial exploitation of a vulnerable individual, and crossing state lines to avoid prosecution for similar crimes against Carla Winters. The sentence wasn't just punishment for what he'd done to us, it acknowledged his pattern of predatory behavior. The financial settlements came next. The court ordered full restitution of Sophia's medical fund, plus additional damages. The Indonesian government released the money Charles had used for the Bali property purchase. Most surprisingly, Paula Bennett, seeking to distance herself from Charles's crimes, voluntarily surrendered the gifts and money he had lavished on her during their relationship. "It won't recover everything," Bobby explained as we reviewed the settlement documents. "But with the restitution and the insurance policy that's been reassigned to Sophia as the rightful beneficiary, her medical care is secure for the foreseeable future." The divorce was finalized quickly, granted on grounds of abandonment and financial misconduct. I was awarded full custody of Sophia with no visitation rights for Charles, a decision he didn't contest, perhaps finally recognizing the battle was lost. Most importantly, Sophia continued to heal, both physically and emotionally. Her cardiologist reported that the valve replacement was functioning well, her energy improving weekly. The child psychologist noted that while she sometimes expressed confusion about her father's absence, she wasn't showing signs of blaming herself, the most common and damaging reaction in children whose parents abandon them. News of Charles's arrest and conviction spread through our community. Some reactions surprised me. Friends who seemed embarrassed to make contact, as if Charles's criminality might somehow be contagious. Others stepped forward with unexpected support, from casseroles delivered to our door to offers of childcare when I needed to attend legal proceedings. Carla Winters and I developed a strange but comforting friendship, united by our shared experience of Charles's betrayal. Her son Matthew, now 9 and thriving in remission, became a source of hope for Sophia's future. tangible proof that recovery from both medical crises and parental abandonment was possible. The hardest part, Carla confided, during one of our long phone conversations, is accepting that the person you loved never actually existed. The Charles you married, the Charles I married. They were carefully crafted personas designed to gain our trust. Her words resonated deeply. The man I had built a life with, had a child with, had trusted with our most vulnerable moments, had been a fiction, a mask worn by a predator skilled at identifying and exploiting vulnerability. The most profound immediate consequence wasn't the legal victory or financial recovery. It was this difficult recognition that sometimes healing begins not by repairing what was broken, but by acknowledging that what you thought you had was never real at all. 1 year after Charles's sentencing, life had settled into a new normal. Sophia had celebrated her 7th birthday with a small party in our backyard, a unicorn theme with purple decorations dominating every surface. Her medical progress continued to impress her doctors, though we maintained vigilant monitoring of her heart function. She had returned to school full-time, joined a gentle swim class designed for children with medical restrictions, and developed a passionate interest in marine biology after our visit to the aquarium. I had returned to work at the nonprofit, now, with flexible hours that accommodated Sophia's medical appointments. My colleagues had welcomed me back with sensitivity and support, creating a workspace where I could rebuild my professional identity while prioritizing my role as Sophia's mother. The financial aftermath of Charles's crimes had stabilized. With the restitution payments, insurance settlements, and careful budgeting, Sophia's medical needs were secured. We had downsized to a smaller house closer to her school and doctors, a fresh start and a space untainted by Charles's deception. Thought's emotional landscape was more complex. Sophia occasionally asked about her father, especially when school events highlighted other children's two-parent families. Following Dr. Hansen's guidance, I answered her questions honestly but age-appropriately. Daddy made choices that hurt our family, I would explain. He's facing consequences for those choices now. It's not because of anything you did, and it doesn't mean you're not lovable or important. Some days, she seemed to accept this easily. Other days brought tears and confusion. Dr. Hansen assured me this was normal, a process that would evolve as Sophia matured and developed new ways of understanding her father's abandonment. For me, the healing came in unexpected moments. In the realization that I could make decisions without second-guessing myself. In the quiet satisfaction of handling household repairs, I would once have deferred to Charles. In the deep bond Sophia and I had forged through adversity, the wider ripples of Charles's actions continued to spread. The FBI had identified 3 other families he had targeted before Carla, women with chronically ill children whom he had courted, married, and defrauded before disappearing with their resources. His case had prompted a special task force focused on financial crimes targeting families in medical crisis. Carla, Matthew, and the other victims had formed an informal support network. Together, we were working with lawmakers to strengthen protections for vulnerable families and increase penalties for those who exploited them. Perhaps the most unexpected development came 6 months after Charles began serving his sentence. A package arrived containing letters he had written to Sophia, dozens of them, some dating back to the earliest days of his affair with Paula. I read each one carefully, searching for manipulation or harmful content before deciding whether to share them with Sophia. What I found instead was a chronicle of a fractured psyche, a man simultaneously planning to abandon his family while writing to the daughter he was betraying. The cognitive dissonance was stunning, revealing a compartmentalization so profound it bordered on pathology. I stored the letters away, unsure if Sophia would ever be ready to read them. They represented yet another complex layer of aftermath. We would navigate when the time was right. The most important lesson of this extended aftermath became increasingly clear. Healing wasn't a destination, but a continual process of growth, adaptation, and renewal. one that Sophia and I were navigating, together, day by day. 2 years to the day since I discovered Charles's betrayal while sitting in a hospital waiting room, I found myself in a different hospital setting, this time celebrating. Sophia's latest echocardiogram showed the valve replacement continuing to function perfectly. Her cardiologist was extending the time between checkups, a milestone that deserved recognition. Ice cream? Sophia suggested as we left the appointment, her purple unicorn backpack bouncing against her spine. At 8 years old, she had grown taller, stronger, her dark hair now long enough for the braids she insisted on wearing every day. The surgical scar on her chest had faded to a thin white line she proudly called her warrior mark. As we sat in the ice cream parlor, Sophia with her strawberry cone, me with coffee, I marveled at how far we had come. The raw pain of betrayal had gradually transformed into something else. Not forgiveness exactly, but a kind of integration. Charles's actions were now part of our story, a difficult chapter, but not the defining one. Financial security had returned through careful planning, and the support systems we'd built. Professional satisfaction had come through my promotion at the nonprofit, where I now directed a program specifically designed to support families facing medical crises. Connection had flourished through our chosen family, Claudette and her new husband, Michael and his wife, the circle of friends who had stood by us, and the unexpected allies we'd found in Charles's other victims. Most importantly, Sophia was thriving. Her resilience continued to humble and inspire me. Last month, when a classmate had made an unkind comment about her not having a dad, Sophia had responded with startling wisdom. Some people don't get good dads, but I got the best mom, so I'm actually really lucky. The question of Charles himself had settled into a manageable space in our lives. He remained in prison, his appeals denied. Sophia had decided, with the help of her therapist, that she wasn't ready to read his letters or visit him. Decisions I supported while leaving the door open for her to change her mind as she matured. As we finished our ice cream, Sophia looked up at me with her father's eyes, but an expression entirely her own. Thoughtful, determined, unquestionably herself. "Mom," she said, suddenly serious, "remember when I was really sick and Dad wasn't there?" I nodded, my chest tightening at the memory. "I was scared then," she continued, "but I'm not scared anymore." "No?" I asked. She shook her head decisively. "Nope, because now I know that even when really hard things happen, we figure it out. That's what you taught me." Her words struck me with unexpected force. Amid all the pain, the betrayal, the struggle to rebuild, this was what had emerged. A child who had learned not that the world was dangerous and people untrustworthy, but that difficulties could be overcome with courage and connection. The life Charles and I had built together had been constructed on illusion, but what had risen from its ruins was solid, authentic, and wholly ours. Our story hadn't ended with betrayal at a hospital bedside. That had been merely the beginning of a different journey, one that had led us here, to this moment of simple joy over ice cream and good medical news. As we walked to the car hand in hand, I reflected that the greatest victory wasn't the legal, justice, financial recovery, or even personal healing, though all were significant. The true triumph was this: that Charles's actions, intended to destroy us, had instead revealed a strength within us that might otherwise have remained undiscovered. That strength would carry us forward, through whatever challenges Sophia's health might present in the future, through the complexities of growing up with an absent father, through all the ordinary and extraordinary moments that awaited us. We had not merely survived, we had transformed, and in that transformation lay our most profound resolution. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.